Today, I'm going to introduce you to some aspects, dimensions, and dynamics of smear campaigns that you have never come across in any other video, on any other channel, in any other text, scholarly or not. Insights into smear campaigns that are going to open your eyes and revolutionize your thinking. Money back, guarantee. My name is Sam Vaknin, and I'm the author of Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited. I'm also a professor of psychology in multiple institutions. And I would like to make two announcements. First of all, if you want to reserve a seat in the free seminar in Ohrid, O-H-A-R-I-D, it's a city, heritage, UNESCO heritage site in North Macedonia. If you want to reserve a seat in the free seminar, 3.5 days seminar, then write to me, samvaknin@gmail.com. There are 160 seats available, and I have 190 people registered, some of whom are obviously not going to make it. So I believe there are very few seats left. Write to me now, the minute you finish watching this video. Another thing, if you would like to have a bonus consultation with either myself or Lidija Rangelovska or both of us, you have to purchase a bundle of books. Write to me, again, samvaknin@gmail.com, and I will tell you how to do it. Okay, enough with all this commercialization, crass commercialization. Let us go right into the delectable topic of smear campaigns. Smear campaigns are much more complex than we are all led to believe. And there are many surprising truths about the structure, membership, and dynamics of smear campaigns. Smear campaigns are psychopathic. They're antisocial because they're goal-oriented. They're premeditated. They're calculated. They're relentless. And they can last for years. Before I proceed to describe what we know about smear campaigns, I would like to make one thing clear. Targeting a narcissist or a psychopath with a smear campaign is a seriously bad idea. Why? Because it doesn't work. Narcissists and psychopaths, when targeted, they relish, they cherish the smear campaign. I have come across narcissists and psychopaths who have launched smear campaigns against themselves. Why is that? Because smear campaigns provide narcissists and psychopaths with attention, excitement, thrills. Smear campaigns justify their paranoid ideation. They are the focus of some malevolent conspiracy, some malicious intent or malintent. So it justifies the paranoia. And paranoia, of course, is a form of narcissism because it places the paranoid firmly in the limelight, at the focus of attention. Smear campaigns legitimize the aggression of narcissists and psychopaths. And smear campaigns affirm the narcissist's self-imputed victimhood. You see, I'm a victim. Narcissists and psychopaths do not experience shame, remorse, because their pathologies, the narcissistic pathology, is intended to shield against the experience of these negative effects. The whole reason for developing a pathological narcissistic shield, the false self, is to not have to experience shame, remorse, regret, and other negative effects related to contrition. Narcissists and psychopaths also do not experience intimidation, chastisement, or fear. They experience anxiety, but anxiety is not the same as fear. And because they're fearless in this sense, and because they cannot be intimidated, they react with rage and elation when they're exposed to a smear campaign. Now, don't get me wrong. Some narcissists and psychopaths, especially the more sophisticated one, may pretend to be intimidated or afraid in order to draw out the instigating party, in order to obtain and gather information and record it, and in order to play mind games, which are the narcissists and psychopaths' favorite pastime. So whatever you do, if your target is a narcissist or a psychopath, smear campaign is absolutely the wrong thing. You would be feeding the beast rather than starving it. Okay, so let's talk about smear campaigns which are targeted at relatively normal, healthy people. First of all, there is the misconception that smear campaigns have to do with lies. Like, if you are spreading the truth, you're not smearing. It's not a campaign. It's, I don't know, investigative journalism. It's whistleblowing. But it's not smear campaigning. That is completely untrue. The truth is often a part of a smear campaign when it is taken out of context, when it is decontextualized deliberately. So a smear campaign can include lies, can include half-truths, and can include complete unvarnished truth, but taken so much out of its natural ambience and environment, taken so much out of context, that it becomes a lie by omission. And there is even an offense, a criminal offense in some countries, and a civil offense in others, called defamation by omission. Okay, so that's the first myth busting. The first myth I'd like to debunk and bust. Smear campaigns do often rely on the truth. However, the truth is so distorted, so isolated, so detached, so reframed, so mirrored in a way that it is rendered effectively a lie. Smear campaign is a form of gangstalking in the sense that a gang of people usually collude and collaborate in order to inflict harm and distress on another person. It is a narrative. Smear campaign is a narrative. Every smear campaign has a story that motivates it, the engine, the narrative engine, and it includes role reversal. Whereas the vast majority of the instigators of smear campaigns are actually perpetrators and offenders, they pretend to be the victims. They point the finger at someone else. They say, he or she is the offender. He or she is the perpetrator. He or she is the cruel one, the evil one. I am the exact opposite. I'm all pure, and I'm all clean. I'm all unadulterated. So it's a narrative role reversal. Now, smear campaigns involve three major management functions, if you wish. Every smear campaign is instigated by a trio of people, a triumvirate, or a triad if you're Japanese. So there are three people usually, or three functions, that collude and collaborate to drive the smear campaign onward and fuel it. And this creates a triadic dynamic. Smear campaigns involve, generally speaking, pathetic losers. People who have failed to make a mark in any other way except by instigating and initiating smear campaigns. Some people smear others as a career choice. So the first function in the smear campaign is a psychopathic cult leader. The psychopathic cult leader usually masquerades as a benevolent guru. He is self-righteous, he is moralizing, and he projects an image of empathy. He affords succor, compassion, affection, and a generalized love of humanity. And this is, of course, all intended to disguise the projection, because it's a psychopath. And all psychopaths are grandiose, so it's a grandiose psychopath and a cult leader, which is a very, very negative person, to use a British understatement. This kind of person has to disguise reality, to disguise his or her true nature. And this is done by projecting the exact opposite of who she or he is. This person within the within the smear campaign is known as the inducer. The inducer induces the smear campaign. It is the inducer who comes up with the narrative flow, the core story, and how the story can evolve and manifest in a multiplicity of ways. These people are usually loners, not in the sense that they don't have friends or don't socialize, but they're unable to maintain long-term relationships, especially with intimate partners. And in the vast majority of cases, they abuse substances, they're alcoholics or junkies. In short, extremely negative and dangerous people. And yet, they have the capacity to act, they have thespian skills. They pull the wool over people's eyes. They're considered sheep rather than wolves. And many people fall for them, and that's how they create cults. And this is the first function in the smear campaign, the inducer. And then we have the exploiter. The exploiter takes a ride on the smear campaign, hijacks the smear campaign. He or she is a free rider. It's usually a faded, bloated, past their prime, histrionic, failed wannabe imposters, usually. They pretend to be investigative journalists or experts or researchers or scholars in order to lend an air of fake professionalism and objectivity to their pursuit of narcissistic supply and celebrity. They adore the limelight. They are addicted to attention. And the only way to conjure up these rare commodities, having failed to do so in the past, is to hitchhike, to take a ride, to latch onto a smear campaign which is high visibility and targets someone who is a celebrity or known in some ways. The exploiter, the hitchhiker, if you wish, the free rider, sublimates her paranoia. In other words, she renders her paranoia socially acceptable. It's a form of ostentatious fake courage, false courage. This kind of person is likely to say, I am taking huge risks, I'm in danger, and I'm doing this because I'm highly courageous and brave, and I don't give in to my fear. I overcome it for the sake of truth and for the sake of exposing wrongdoers and evil people, etc., etc. They have this self-justifying narrative, but at the core of it is paranoia. These people are highly paranoid. They are clinically paranoid, actually. And the failure, their inability to garner attention, or as much attention as they believe they deserve, renders them collapse narcissists. So the exploiter is a collapse narcissist. Now, usually there's a single cult leader, but sometimes multiple exploiters. So that's the second function. The third function is, in the smear campaign, is the cult member. The cult member in the smear campaign is usually someone who has spent his or her entire adult life, in cults. This kind of person has what we call a cult mind. This kind of person gravitates towards cult leaders and instantaneously transforms into a cult member. This kind of person blindly follows orders. This kind of person immerses himself or immures himself in the cult leader's rabbit hole, delusional hall of mirrors. And the eternal cult member or sempiternal cult member, the third function in the smear campaign, is doing all this because they need to feel a sense of belonging to some kind of extended family, a friendship, intimacy. They want to be accepted, warts and all, shortcomings. They're usually repulsive. They're usually extremely unlikable and unlovable. They are pretty stupid, typically, and the cult leader simulates friendship and gives them what they want, and they're too stupid to realize it. And so they self-deceive easily, and they become essentially slaves of the cult leader. And again, whereas in a smear campaign, there's a single cult leader, there could be multiple exploiters and multiple slaves, multiple cult members. And this shape-shifting triad of shape-shifting triumvirate recruits people with grievances, people who are anyhow angry, people who are hateful, people who are envious, grievances which are real or imagined. The cult leader, the exploiters, and the slaves recruit other people who are vulnerable, because, as I said, they're full of rage, suppressed rage that they cannot express in any other way. And these other people, the outer circle, they do the bidding of the cult leader. These people act as cannon fodder or flying monkeys. And these are the four circles of hell of the smear campaign. Now, the people who are recruited by the triad divide themselves into two groups. They are the proselytizers, those who are trying to convert other people to the cause. So they go around spreading the message of the cult leader, smearing the target, collecting evidence, acting brave, collaborating with the exploiters, leveraging the resources of the slaves, and so on. And their main goal, their main aim, and their main function within the smear campaign is to recruit as many people as possible. And the second group are the disseminators. Disseminators just spread the word. They are the ones who post on social media and then go home. They're passive. So they're active recruits and passive recruits. But all these people, what they have in common is that they're paranoid, they're full of rage and anger, they're envious, and they're hateful. And within the smear campaign, there are canonical texts. These are the texts that cannot be tampered with, cannot be challenged, cannot be undermined, cannot be examined critically. These are the texts issued forth by the cult leader. The cult leader says, for example, this man is evil. This man belongs in prison. This man should be dead. And this is a canonical text. You can't challenge this. And then there are other types of texts. Exegetical texts. These are texts that interpret the canonical texts. So, for example, this man is evil because of this and that reason. He's a narcissist, psychopath, whatever. So these are the exegetic, the interpretative texts, which are generated by the exploiter and by the proselytizers, usually. And then there's a third layer of deconstruction and embellishment, where the message and narrative, the fiction that underlies the smear campaign, becomes exaggerated, becomes embellished, becomes florid and colorful, and inflates and balloons, literally out of control. And then you have inane stories. If the initial canonical text claimed that this person has committed crimes, for example, then the embellished text or the deconstructed text would claim that these crimes were only minor, and actually there were much more egregious crimes committed that have been suppressed or were undiscovered hitherto. So the smear campaign is like a series of concentric waves. The cult leader throws a stone in the pond, and then there are many waves, outward and outward, and each wave is bigger than the previous one. And each wave is basically less and less recognizable, more and more detached from the original. And this is exactly the aim of the psychopathic cult leader at the center of the smear campaign. All smear campaigns in this sense are kind of conspiracy theories. Mind you, not all conspiracy theories are smear campaigns, but all smear campaigns are conspiracy theories because they have narrative themes. The narrative themes of smear campaigns are folkloric: sexual abuse, fraud, malice, maltreatment, comeuppance. Smear campaigns are reified or embodied morality plays of good versus evil. The target of the smear campaign is all evil. The instigator, the psychopathic cult leader, who started the smear campaign is all good. Within the smear campaign, there are cult-like dynamics. The world is divided into those who collaborate with the smear campaign, believe in the messages or the messaging of the smear campaign, and these are friends. And those who do not believe or dare to question or challenge or have doubts and so on, they are the enemies. So you're either for me or against me. The smear campaign also boasts and brags of having some kind of privileged secret information, arcane knowledge that is not accessible to outsiders. There's a process of initiation into the smear campaign. The smear campaign is highly ritualistic. The firewall that defends, that protects and isolates the smear campaign from the outside world is a firewall of rituals and testing. And the new recruits into the smear campaign have to swear by the canonical texts, have to agree to be allegiant to the cult leader, the psychopathic cult leader at the heart of the smear campaign, the spider at the core of the cobweb or the spider web, and they have to profess to full unmitigated belief in the main messages of the smear campaign. The inducer, the psychopathic cult leader, creates in effect what we know as a shared psychotic disorder or mass psychogenic illness. And because the typical instigator or inducer of a smear campaign is a psychopath, a grandiose megalomaniacal psychopath, and so therefore a bit narcissistic or a lot narcissistic, there is also an element of shared fantasy. Now, the main goal of a smear campaign is preemptive epistemic injury, to create in the victim of the smear campaign, in the target of the smear campaign, a preemptive epistemic injury. What is a preemptive epistemic injury? Epistemic injury is when someone doesn't believe you. You're telling the truth about how you have been mistreated, how you have been victimized, how you have been wronged, and no one believes you. This creates epistemic injury. And in the smear campaign, the epistemic injury is preemptive. One of the main messages of the smear campaign initially is do not believe the victim of the smear campaign. Do not believe the target of the smear campaign, because this victim or this target, they're liars, they're evil, they're narcissists, they're psychopaths. Don't believe them. So a core canonical text initiated by the psychopathic cult leader that comes up with the smear campaign is the victim or target cannot be believed, are incredible. They don't have credibility. This creates in the victim or the target epistemic injury. The victim is confused, isolated. The victim loses reality testing. He's no longer sure what's real, what's not. Begins to develop self-doubts, self-recrimination, maybe even guilt and shame for things they have never done. And this results in an unsafe environment. The smear campaign comes replete with threats, subtle threats, surreptitious threats, and also explicit and overt threats. Like, we're going to put you in prison, we're going to destroy your life, we're going to take away your livelihood, we're going to make your spouse divorce you, we're going to, your children will be estranged. I mean, there's always a threat, usually several threats. And the threats are not presented as threats, they're presented as just desserts. They're presented as punishment for wrongdoing by the target or the victim of the smear campaign. And this creates an enormous sense of unsafety, instability, indeterminacy, ominous, menacing overtones and undertones, a very threatening environment. Mind you, the exception to this is the narcissist and psychopath. Whereas this is the reaction of healthy, normal people, narcissists and psychopaths love it. They cherish this. They relish this. They want more of it. And so whatever I'm saying today applies to normal, healthy people, victims and targets of abnormal, unhealthy people, narcissists and psychopaths. So, as I said, the smear campaign is initiated and instigated 100% of the time by mentally disturbed people. The smear campaign involves self-enhancement, self-aggrandizing, a defense against ego dystonic shame and guilt, against loss, against nuance. The smear campaigns diverts and distracts the mentally ill people who have started it from their own culpability, their own guilt, and their own shame. And usually the cult leader who starts the smear campaign has this rescuer, savior, fixer, healer, crusader complex. Like, this is not a smear campaign, he would say. This psychopathic cult leader, he would say, this is not a smear campaign. The inducer would say, it's not a smear campaign. I am exposing evil people and I'm going to punish them. And I'm going to save vulnerable women or vulnerable children or what have you. So the inducer of the smear campaign, who is 100% rank psychopath and a cult leader, and worse, usually this kind of person does abuse, molest other people, women and children included. But he presents it as if he is targeting the victim of the smear campaign because the victim has done something wrong. And he is saving people from the target of the smear campaign. And that's the rescuer, savior, crusader complex, which the exploiters also tend to adopt. The exploiter, the wannabe, investigative journalist, researcher, expert, documentary filmmaker, what have you, the exploiter also comes with a message. I am doing this selflessly. I'm not selfish, I'm not self-preoccupied, I'm not histrionic, I'm not out for attention, I'm not a narcissist, I'm doing this because I'm a good person. I'm doing this because I'm courageous, I'm selfless, I'm actually sacrificing myself for the benefit, for the greater good, for the benefit of others. Of course, such extreme self-denial involves splitting. Splitting is when you divide the world into all good people and all bad people. People who are all good and people who are all bad. And in the case of the people involved in the smear campaign, the splitting is also self-splitting. They split themselves into an all good part, which they adopt as their identity, and an all bad part, which they reject, they cannot accept, and then they attribute it to the target. So a typical psychopathic cult leader would be actually a perpetrator, an offender. And then he would split himself and he would say, this part is all good. I'm a rescuer, I'm a savior, I'm a healer, I'm a fixer, I'm a coach, I'm a teacher, I'm a guru, I'm a good person, I'm a wise person. And he would adopt this as his identity. And then there's the shadow part, the dark part, the part where this person committed all the crimes that he attributes to the target or the victim. And then he would take this part, which he cannot accept, which he rejects, and he would attribute it to the victim. And this is known as projection. It's a defense mechanism. So the psychopathic cult leader and the exploiter within the inducer and the exploiter within this conspiracy, within the smear campaign, they split themselves, they split other people, and then what they do, they take the part of themselves that they cannot live with, that they cannot accept, and they project it onto the target and the victim, attributing to the target or the victim everything they have done wrong. Every trait they find every trait of theirs that they find intolerable and unbearable. This is known as reaction formation. Reaction formation is when you act the opposite of who you are. You're actually an evil perpetrator, and then you act as the holy saint who is out to get evil perpetrators. You are someone who is vicious and cruel, psychopathic, sadistic, and malevolent. And then you act as if you are the exact opposite. You are the person who exposes such people. You are the person who takes them down. You're a savior. You're a hero. So this is known as reaction formation. Of course, all this is intended to harvest attention, number one, and number two, and number three. Attention is the most important thing here. Sympathy, allegiance, loyalty, commitment by others, validation, soothing, and empowerment. These are the psychological benefits of the smear campaign as far as the inducer and exploiter are involved. The smear campaign gives them attention, gives them the allegiance of other people, so they feel empowered and they feel soothed, they feel comforted by the smear campaign, because it takes away the dark side, it takes away the shadow part, it takes away the horrible things they've done and the horrible people they are, and it kind of gives it away to the target or the victim. And now they're purified, they're cleansed, they're unadulterated now. They feel ethereal, they feel wonderful. And this is, of course, a form of externalized aggression. Many smear campaigns are motivated in the background, not by some kind of moral crusade, not by some kind of attempt to better the world, not by some kind of even a drive to expose wrongdoers. No. Most smear campaigns are the outcomes of very, very base instincts and drives and urges and affects. Most smear campaigns involve aggression, revenge. If you have shamed someone in public, if you have humiliated someone in public, for example, they're likely to come for your blood. They're likely to instigate or initiate a smear campaign against you if they're psychopaths or narcissists. Psychopaths, more likely. Smear campaigns are more typical of psychopaths, actually. And so that's one example. Revenge, vengeance is a big theme. Virulent envy. When psychopaths and narcissists envy someone, it frustrates them. They want to take that someone down. They want to rip that someone apart. They want to destroy that someone. And one of the ways to accomplish this is by initiating a smear campaign. And the smear campaign elevates the inducer and the exploiter, elevates the psychopathic cult leader, the wannabe public crusader, the cult member, the other people. All of them are elevated, morally elevated. They attain the moral high ground. And it's a form of extreme repression and denial. And it's a strong indicator that these people are mentally ill, because only mentally ill people are capable of such pathologized, infantile, primitive defense mechanisms. They're typical of narcissism, psychopathy, borderline, and so on. So these are the things you may have not known about smear campaigns. I hope I've given you the structure, the membership types, and the dynamics of a smear campaign. And I will be able to apply it into smear campaigns that you're experiencing yourself, or smear campaigns that you're observing, mainly on the online, and not only online. Now, how to tell the difference between a smear campaign and investigative journalism? Investigative journalism is about causes. It's about a cause. It's about something that is wrong. Smear campaigns are about people. It's about a person. It's personalized. So when you see personal attacks against someone, that's usually a smear campaign. When you see someone exposed for their misdeeds, for their crimes, for their wrongdoing, and bad decisions and choices, generally awful behavior or whatever, when the emphasis is not on the individual, but on the behaviors, on the choices, on the decisions, and on the outcomes of these choices, decisions, and behaviors, then this could be investigative journalism. Unfortunately, it starts with investigative journalism and very often deteriorates online into a smear campaign. So be very careful not to cross this line. Smear campaigns have existed forever. There were pamphlets in the 17th century and so on. There were forms of smear campaigns. But modern technology has amplified and magnified smear campaigns to the point that they, in my view, should be criminalized. And the people who instigate them should end up behind bars. The damage they cause to people who are not narcissists and psychopaths is incalculable. Ironically, narcissists and psychopaths thrive on smear campaigns. So don't feed them.